Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're speaking about the product life cycle. And this is the Amazon FBA edition. Every single product has a life cycle the same way we do as humans, right? We're born, we are children, and then we become adults, and then we become elderly, and then we eventually die. Same way with products. Products are developed, they go through a few different stages until they die off. And we're going to speak about those different stages and how you can try to extend the life cycle of your product on Amazon FBA as long as possible. So if you are new here, my name is Sharon Evan. I have been selling on Amazon since 2016. I also do one-on-one Amazon coaching with people who need help to build their brands on Amazon and or need help to scale their brands. I'm also a product developer and a brand builder, and I love what I do, and that's why I also make this content. If you're interested in that type of content, please do subscribe. It really helps me to grow this channel. And also if you're in need in one-on-one coaching, I will put my services down below. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so product lifecycle Amazon FBA edition. The reason I'm saying Amazon FBA edition is because in my experience, I've sold in brick and mortar stores, I've sold at fairs, I've sold on Amazon, I still sell on Amazon, but I've sold outside of Amazon, I've had my own stores. And I think that specifically on an Amazon FBA level, a product definitely has It's a similar life cycle outside of Amazon, but on an Amazon FBA level, I think it's important to understand what the product life cycle may look like. So the same way that we as humans have a life cycle, right? We are developed, right? We're made, then we are grown in our mother's stomach. And then we are born, and then we grow inside in the real world. Right? We go from being a baby to being a child, to being a teenager, to being an adult, to being, getting older and older, to being an elderly person, and eventually we die. Right? That's what a usual life cycle of a human being looks like. Right? And then, for example, if we take a bird, right, it goes from an egg and then it is hatched. And it develops from a chick all the way up to a mature bird, and also eventually dies. Same thing with products. Products are born and they eventually die. But there's a whole journey from the day that they are launched or introduced into the market all the way to when you end up either deciding not to sell them anymore, or the niche, completely dies off. And there's a whole journey that you go through there, and there's different types of cycles that you may go through. So the product life cycle on an Amazon FBA level will usually have 5 stages. So it'll have the development stage, where that's when the product is being developed. You're sourcing it, you're manufacturing it, preparing it for Amazon. And what I mean for preparation for Amazon is everything. Right? It's your images, it's your listing, it's your copywriting, it's, everything on an Amazon FBA level. And then of course on a actual product development, sourcing, manufacturing level, shipping, etc. And then from development, we move to introduction. Introduction is when the product is being introduced into the marketplace. Now remember, this is specifically a product life cycle. And what I mean by that is a product that you are selling on Amazon. So this could either be a totally new product to the market that has absolutely no search volume, and this may be that you're just launching your product in an existing marketplace. So, and that's the example that I'm using. So after we go from development, we go into introduction, and that's when the product is being launched. You want to then check at launch, is the concept accepted by the market? Even if you're launching a product that already exists, I hope in 2023 that you are either highly differentiating your product, or at least you found a differentiation point that matters to the buyers, and are also using branding as part of your positioning on an Amazon level. So in the introduction process is usually when you'll see whether your concept is being accepted. Now in launch, we're usually launching with PPC. You usually would start with pretty aggressive PPC so that you can be seen. Whether you want to call it aggressive PPC or not aggressive PPC, at launch in general, that's when you go hard when it comes to PPC, to make sure that you can get as much eyeballs on your product, which would hopefully then turn to conversion if you've done a good job. Usually in the introduction stage, you are in negative cash flow. And the reason is that during product development and introduction, obviously in product development, you have no sales, right? And in the introduction, usually sales are slower. And even if they're not slower and you were able to get it right from the very beginning and you've gotten sales very, very quickly, then you'll usually need to put in your second order before you've even made money back from your first order. And that's why you're usually at a negative cash flow at the introduction. So from development to introduction, then we move into the growth stage. The growth stage is if your product has reached that stage, you're usually at a good place. It's usually then being accepted by the market, which also means that on an Amazon level, you should have much better organic ranking, or start to have organic ranking. At this stage, you're usually past the launch. You're usually past what we would call the introduction stage. At growth, you're usually going to start to increase your market share within the niche. You'll have faster sales growth because it's growth. Okay, you can also call it, at scale. Usually at growth, you may start to become more profitable. Okay, now for some people may ask, well, when do I know that I'm in the growth stage? Well, when your sales start to grow. Somewhere between growth and the next stage, which is maturity, you should be profitable, right? Between growth to maturity also usually is when cash flow starts to become more positive, because at that stage you should be getting your bi-weekly payouts from Amazon. Your sales should be growing, and also as your product gets better, you should be also optimizing your COGS. When you're first launching a product and it's just at the introduction stage and you haven't even got proof of concept, etc., you're usually not ordering tens of thousands of units or lots and lots of stock. You usually would test the market, which means that usually when you're ordering less units, usually your COGS are going to be higher because you're ordering less units, so your MOQ is going to be lower. And then also on a shipping level, you're ordering less units, which means that on a cost per unit, your shipping is going to be higher. So obviously when your sales are growing, and then also you're slowly ordering more and more units, and also that's when usually you'll be able to start to optimize your COGS more and more. And not only that, as you grow and as you get more organic ranking, and as your sales get better, your conversion gets better, you're getting more reviews, you've re-optimized your listing, etc. When you're at that stage, your cost per unit also after PPC, etc., should usually start to go down, because your PPC on a cost per unit level should be cheaper than what it was at launch, right? Sometimes when you're at launch, I'll give an example. Maybe you've launched and PPC is going to cost you, $15 per unit, not per click, per unit, right? Your spend divided by the amount of units you sell a month will show you what your cost per unit is on a PPC level. But like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 10 months in, it may be all the way down to $6 per unit, right? Now, this is obviously me just giving random examples. But the point is that when you're at the growth stage, or at least between the growth and maturity, which is the next stage, at that point, you should be at a much better place with your COGS and with your marketing spend or PPC spend as well. At this stage, you should be. And at this stage, usually the market isn't as saturated as yet, or you haven't had crazy copycats as yet. And also you should be able to keep your price higher if you've done a really good job at product differentiation. So if you've reached the growth stage and you're now moving towards the maturity stage, usually you know that you have a winning product, because this is at least a good couple of months or even a year in. And if your product is still getting sales and you're able to get that organic ranking, you're able to convert well, and it's just a matter of optimizing on a numbers level, then you're usually know that it's a winning product. So we've gone through the development stage, the introduction stage, and now we've reached growth. The next stage is your maturity stage. This stage can be years in, it could be months in. It really, really, really depends on a product. So for example, if you're launching, let's take Apple as an example, right? When Apple launches a new iPhone every single September, pretty sure it's September, right? They're already at maturity stage, really, really quickly, right? Their product life cycle usually has, a year when it's at its absolute best. And then the new product comes out. So a product life cycle like that has a year or so where it's doing well, and that's it. But products not like that aren't electronics, and there's just a better version coming out on the next one, right? Products that aren't like that, they, you may be for 10 years at that, growth to maturity stage. So it's hard to put a number on this. It really, really depends. So maturity stage, usually the market's now getting crowded by copycats. At this stage, you're most probably going to start seeing copycats. I'll speak a little bit about that soon. So what that usually means, once you're starting in copycats and the market starts to get more saturated, you may start to see slower sales growth. So if up to now you were growing, you were able to reach some sort of stability, now you may see that it's more or less staying the same rather than growing. You may lose some organic ranking, prices may start to drop within your niche, but your cash flow should be better at this stage. That's the maturity stage. Then at some point, usually all products eventually will then see the decline stage, which this is where the market has reached absolute saturation. Very often there may be more competitors than what there is demand. Sales start to decline, by quite a lot, and your profits and cash flow may then weaken. So that is the 5 stages of a product life cycle when we look at it from a bird's eye view: development to introduction to growth to maturity and to decline. Right? Next, I want to talk a little bit about what your sales usually may look like. So I do have on my screen, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I encourage you to find either my YouTube channel, the Sharon Evan YouTube channel, or the Seller Sessions YouTube channel, so that you can see what I'm showing. But at the end of the day, I have a line graph here, and it is basically showing time versus sales. So obviously at the development stage, you have no sales, right? And if I also had a profits line here as well, so I've got a blue line here and it's a sales line. If I also had a profits line, then obviously the development stage, you'd be in the minus, and you'd be in the minus until probably somewhere in between introduction and growth, right? So you may have sales early on, but it doesn't mean that you're going to have profit straight away. So at the development stage, your sales are usually going to be at 0. And then at the introduction stage, which is usually your launch stage, right, your sales are going to be small, right? Because you are slowly getting organic ranking, you're slowly getting sales, and slowly your sales are going to grow and grow. And then you reach the growth stage, right? And so it's kind of like your growth stage, you're kind of halfway through the mountain, right? Haven't reached the very top, but you're halfway there. That's kind of what the graph looks like on my screen. And between growth and maturity, there is quite a bit of stability, and then quite a bit of growth. And around maturity, you've more or less reached the top of the mountain, and then now you're going sideways on the mountain between maturity and decline. And at the decline, you're now, if you're imagining a mountain in your head, if you're listening to this on the podcast, the decline basically then is when you start going down that mountain. That's kind of what the line graph looks like. This is usually what your sales would look like at the different stages. Now, what happens very, very often is people wait to make changes to their marketing efforts only when they reach somewhere between the maturity and the decline stage, right? If you want to be able to extend your product life cycle for as long as possible, my 2 suggestions would be, number 1, I hope today in 2023 that you're approaching products and bringing new products into the market on a branding level. What I mean by that is I hope that you are building brands rather than just looking for random opportunities to sell random products, right? Especially on Amazon FBA level, the way further, like the future is, it's all about brand building. I've got endless amount of content around this, both on the Seller Sessions podcast and on my YouTube channel. Anyway, but I hope that you're approaching your products not just from how do I sell this product, but how do I also build a brand, right? Now, what happens is if you do this properly and you're also looking at on a marketing level, if you want to extend your product lifecycle as much as possible, then I would recommend that from the very beginning, right? From the very beginning, you give this 100%. You go all in from the very beginning on making sure that your listing is optimized to the T, that you have amazing images, that you have amazing videos, that you are optimizing your PPC and you're trying new things with PPC, and that you're starting social media, and wherever your buyers hang out, that you hang out with them, and you don't wait until you reach the decline stage to do that, right? Because what happens is if you're doing this properly and you've built your own sort of following for your brand, when you reach the decline stage, you can do all sorts of awesome things when you have, got your own types of buyers and you're not just dependent on an Amazon level as well. So you don't want to get only to the decline stage to exhaust every single, marketing aspect. You want to be able to do that also before, so that you may never get to the decline stage, or that, you're dragging on that stage for a really long time. So if, let's just say you want to wait until the growth stage to do this, that's also fine. But you definitely want to make sure that wherever your buyers are, you're there. Okay, so if they're on YouTube, that whatever makes sense for your specific brand, that your products are on YouTube too, whether you're working with YouTube influencers or whether you're having your own YouTube channel that is making educational content for your buyers. If your buyers are on TikTok, you need to be on TikTok. If your buyers are on Instagram, you need to be on Instagram. If your buyers are, downloading downloadable stuff online, you need to be doing that, etc. And not only that, also you don't want to wait until the decline stage. What happens is, especially because I do a lot of coaching, a lot of people come to me when they're at the decline stage, and it's not that it's too late, but sometimes it is almost too late. And then I'm like, oh, now you remembered, to start doing this stuff. So things like trying to get your products into stores, or into fairs, or, getting different types of deals. It depends on the product. I've got so many products going through my head. But these are all things that you don't want to wait only until the decline stage to do. Now, I want to move for a second and talk a little bit about a niche life cycle. Because up to now, I've spoken about you launching a product, what your product life cycle may look like, but there's also, your product life cycle can also be impacted by the niche life cycle, right? So what often happens, I've got another line chart, and the blue line is demand, the red line is competition. What happens very, very often is that a niche will have its own sort of life cycle as well. And sometimes this can take 100 years. Sometimes this can take, 20 years. Sometimes it can take 2 years, right? But sometimes what can happen is that when a niche has reached its maturity level, what can sometimes happen is that the demand is somewhat stable, but the competition keeps on growing and growing and growing. And then the niche gets extremely, extremely saturated. And then there is so much competition with less demand. And sometimes you may have launched a product when the niche life cycle, the niche was at only, a growth stage. And 4 years, 5 years, 7 years down the line, it's at a maturity stage where there's pretty stable demand, but there's just so much competition. What a lot of people do at that time is that they stop selling those products, right? They'll pull out because either they didn't do a good enough job at differentiation, either they didn't do any sort of branding, they didn't do anything outside the box. They just approach this as typical private label, put their whatever it may be. And then a lot of people start to leave a niche. And the people that actually stay within that niche and make those changes and, up their game, etc., that's usually when also you can actually make quite a bit of money, when people start to leave a niche. So that's also something that I would encourage you to think about. So a product life cycle, there are, in my opinion, on an Amazon FBA level, there's 5 different stages. We've got development, introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. And you definitely want to make sure that you can extend the life cycle of your product as much as possible before it reaches the decline stage, and if at all. But you definitely, the one thing that I can definitely recommend that you want to have a look at is at what stage. Sometimes it's really hard to know at what stage you're at, but sometimes you can have a look and you'll be like, shit, like I'm at the maturity stage. You want to make sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can to extend your product's life cycle, right? Whether that means that you're launching new versions of the product, that you're launching new products within that niche. And this is the thing, I believe that the one thing that can save you when your niche has become somewhat saturated is your branding. And if you can build a brand around a specific type of buyer avatar or a very specific type of niche, and then you can become a freaking shark in that niche and dominate within that niche. On a branding level in general, you can extend your life cycle as long as possible, because eventually, right, brands come and go. How many times, and products come and go, how many times have you heard people like Kevin King and others say, I used to sell this, right? I thank God, I still sell most of the products that I've launched. I can say that there are products that I stopped selling. We'll all eventually stop selling certain types of products. But we want to be able to extend that as much as possible. And I honestly believe that the thing that will save you will be your branding and your differentiation. And if you can dominate within a specific niche, or if you can dominate for a specific buyer avatar. So for example, what I mean by that is not just selling a kids yoga mat, but building an entire brand around kids yoga. And what then also happens is that you can then also start doing a lot of cross-selling as well. And when you're building a brand around a specific type of niche or a specific type of buyer avatar, it's also, you want to become that go-to brand within that niche, but it's also a lot easier to do off of Amazon stuff as well. So why? And part of the reason is because it's so clear who your buyer avatar is, and you can really learn everything there is about them and where they are and what they need to see and what they, etc. And that can help you to not only extend the life cycle of your product, but also extend the life cycle of your brand. So I hope that this was helpful to you guys, to help you to understand what the product life cycle usually looks like. And if you need help with that, feel free to reach out to me, SharonEvan.com /coaching, or you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, anywhere, official Sharon Evan. All right, guys, thanks, and I'll see you all next time.